you could always have something like that as part of the 2021 NBA regular season. There could be a group stage towards the end of the year that like kind of simulates the end of the season. You could use that. I'm just saying, if you have a shortened season and you have no other choice, just saying.
You're getting that thing in there no matter what, aren't you?
I'm just saying.
You're getting that group stage in the NBA.
I mean,
I do want to comment on what our boss, Bill Simmons, and then he went on a podcast with Zach Lowe, and they kind of discussed it a little bit, and that is next season. Before we look to the off season, we do need to kind of understand when is next season. And these guys have clearly done a lot of talking to people throughout the league. After listening to them, I tried to call around and find out what people knew. And I think if for those that have not listened, just to sum this up, the basic idea that Bill was laying out was next NBA season is going to be messed up no matter what. So keep intact the following season and being able to get back on the regular NBA schedule. Now, what this would include is probably not starting at Christmas, but rather Martin Luther King Day, having that entire day, almost making that like a Christmas day, as I understand it, and then start the season there. You decide on a number of games, whether that's 70 games or 50 games or whatever, but then be able to have 8 weeks of playoffs there at the end when they usually are in June, and be able to wrap up the season then, and then be able to get on a normal schedule after that. Obviously, there's a million details to work out, but the idea is not knowing when you can have fans in the stands anyway. Let's try to plan something and put something together where, yes, it's less of a season games-wise, but even if we have to start it late, we get a significant amount of games in, and we're back on track for the following season. And Martin Luther King Day seems reasonable if that's a date.
In other words, what Bill and Zach were saying maybe teams are worried about, the league is worried about, is the fact that ending the season during the NFL season, with everything else happening, MLB playoffs, NHL, everything, it has hurt. And so you want to get it done earlier. I haven't heard anything about starting in January as of late. I know that's been talked about a lot. I've still heard a lot about February or March being more likely than January, but that's not off the table by any means.
Well,
there certainly are a segment of people that do want to see January for all the reasons that they discussed and we are now.
Yeah, I think that the reason March is so hard to get to is because if you decide you're going to start in March, and then you still can't have your fans back in the stands, then you're going to sit back and you're going to go, well, then why did we waste all of this time? Let's just go ahead and start this thing in January, and then we'll figure out when we can get, if that is a minor amount of fans in the stands, if that's half a stadium, whatever it may be. Maybe by that time there's a vaccine. Maybe, we're in a different world, hopefully, with COVID-19 at that point. But that if you did start in March, you wouldn't be able to finish. You know what I mean? You might look back and say, geez, we just wasted 2 months because we thought if we started in March, we could have fans back in the stands, but now we can't. And so not being able to plan for that, I think you just try to figure out, how do we get a season in?
It's ultimately going to be about the following year, what would be the 2021-22 season, and not screwing that up. And with that, even a January start, it's probably hard to have an October start unless you have a really condensed, shortened off season for the players, which, for whatever team end up making a run to the conference finals and the finals, that might be a bit unfair to them, in terms of rest and getting their body back to 100%. But, the fact is that if you do want to retain that October start to the season, that might be what you have to do. But maybe what you do is you could have a November start. You could do that. Could be a 1 month late start instead of, 3 months late by starting in January instead of October. So there's ways. Hey, maybe it's going to change things.
And maybe it is an agent for change. Maybe all of a sudden, and I know Bill's outlined this, that start after, at the end of November when it's like week 10 of the NFL
that's
season,
what I'm in favor of.
Right?
I'm in favor of that. Yeah.
And then play 70 games, play 72 games. Spread them out a little bit more and, shorten the schedule. Have your play-in stuff at the end of the season. There were lessons learned from the bubble. One of the lessons is you can't go up against football. Another lesson was people are going to love that play-in, and they are going to love that at the end of a season. And so there's some things that you came out of this, and frankly, it took this to realize it. But for years there was that, hey, why don't we just start at Christmas and then we can end a little bit later in the summer? And Adam Silver went out of his way during, I believe it was game 1 of the finals when he did his press conference and said, what we've learned is that we need our summer months. We need June and July, right? As the moments where the NBA has center stage, because the more it gets fractured, and obviously this is an election cycle too, but the more it gets fractured, the worse it is. And so look, there's a bunch of lessons learned from the bubble. I'm with you though. Starting in late November, it seems, and less games. I don't care if there's 82 games.
To me, a late November or a start anytime in December is the move. I mean, we talked about that during the hiatus. We talked about that when it was floated out there by someone from the Hawks front office. I forget who talked about it. I believe it's Sloan.
Yeah.
And he was a big, supporter of it, as there are a lot of people in the league that think starting in December is the perfect middle ground, because then with a slightly shortened season and a play-in, instead you could have the finals take place in July or early August, which is just as NFL is about to really start going. If you're the NBA, in that situation, you lose some of the hype about the offseason, about the draft and free agency, how close it gets to the NFL start of the regular season, or even preseason for that matter. But as long as you get the finals in before that, I think you're in good shape. But we'll see.
The other thing is this: if you can play out this season and get it done when the season would normally end, you also preserve the ability for your players to go play in the Olympics. And that has not come up a bunch, but that is a major factor. When your best players in the league include Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo and Luka Doncic and on and on and on. I mean, these are not just guys that you would be saying, hey, I know it's important to them to play for their country. It's a different world than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. These are the best of the best players in your league, and it matters greatly. You only get a couple of cracks to play in the Olympics, and especially in your prime.
You do.
And it matters greatly for them to be able to represent their country and to go and play in the Olympics. And if you tried to extend this season, again, you're just punting on that. They're not going to be able to participate in that. And I do think that matters to a lot of guys. I do.
Oh, it 100% does. 100%. Yeah. And it's the type of thing, the Olympics are supposed to start July 23rd, 2021. And at that point, if you're starting the season in March, I don't know, Jokic. I don't know, Luka. No. I don't know, Giannis, if you're actually going to be able to make that, especially on the teams that they play for. I don't know if the season, what it'll be at that point. But the fact is, if you start in late January, there's a chance with a condensed season.
Yeah.
And I think that might be the approach there for the NBA. Maybe you take a hit and then you're set up to start in October or in November, whatever you want to do when you recalibrate things for the following year.
Yep. And you could knock it out, certainly. I mean, we did that. We did that during the lockout year.
And by the way,
you know what I mean? It just became a shortened season.
One thought that just came to mind, and I haven't heard this discussed in months, but when we were talking about, the play-in or the group stage that were both in discussion and had a lot of support, the group stage meaning like an Olympic style pool of, 6 teams or whatever it might be competing against each other to get into the regular postseason tournament. You could always have something like that as part of the 2021 NBA regular season. There could be a group stage towards the end of the year that kind of simulates the end of the season. You could use that. I'm just saying, if you have a shortened season and you have no other choice, I'm just saying.
You're getting that thing in there no matter what, aren't you?
I'm just saying.
You're getting that group stage in the NBA.
I mean, if you're trying to get the season over partially because of the Olympics and a large segment of your players wanting to have an opportunity to perform and play in that, you could also capture the spirit of the Olympics and take. I mean, look, they use this year to experiment.
Yep.
why not also use next season, especially if it has to be a shortened season? What's more exciting, like a 50-game regular season or like a 50-game regular season with a group stage element? Something else to experiment, because you know play-in got support.
Yep.
You know Elam ending and the All-Star games got support. Why not also see if this could work for like a mid-season tournament format in the future?
I'm sure
just
it'll
saying.
be on the table.
I'm just saying.